The scent of sawdust and wood stain still lingered on my clothes as I turned into my driveway. 10 hours at the furniture shop, bone tired, just wanting to relax in my basement game room with my 1952 Brunswick gold crown that I'd spent 14 months restoring from a water-damaged wreck into vintage perfection. I hit the garage remote. The door rolled up, revealing felt so green it hurt your eyes and rails polished to mirror finish. That's when my world imploded. Neighbor. Someone call the police. He's running an illegal gambling operation. My HOA president neighbor, Patricia, came storming across her perfectly manicured lawn like a suburban pit bull with a law degree. Phone already glued to her ear. Yes, there's a Hispanic man operating a gambling den right next door. Send backup. Police sirens were already screaming in the distance. She dialed 911 before even pretending to investigate. I'm standing in my own basement doorway, holding my own keys, looking at my own pool table, about to be arrested for operating a casino. What would you do if your neighbor weaponized law enforcement against you in your own home? Drop a flag emoji. Where are you watching from? Let's see how far this madness spreads. My name is Diego, and I'm a third-generation woodworker. My grandfather taught my father taught me, and we've been crafting furniture in this town for 65 years. When my divorce was finalized last winter, thanks to my ex-wife's sudden realization that wood shavings in my hair weren't sophisticated enough for her social circle, I used my settlement to buy a modest home in Meadowbrook Commons. Upper-middle-class HOA community where the driveways are pristine, the shutters coordinate, and everyone respects each other's privacy. Or so the realtor guaranteed. The Brunswick wasn't some midlife crisis impulse buy. I discovered her at a bankruptcy auction 14 months ago, a waterlogged disaster that most people would have hauled to the dump for scrap. But beneath all that damage, I saw pure American craftsmanship waiting for resurrection. $2,800 later, she was mine. Every evening for over a year became my personal restoration odyssey. New slate bed, rebuilt cushion system, complete rail reconstruction. The felt replacement alone took 3 months of measuring, cutting, and stretching, until the championship green surface could host professional tournaments. I photographed every screw, every bracket, every hour of labor for insurance documentation, kept every invoice in a 4-ring binder thicker than a dictionary. The smell of fresh wood stain and leather became my weeknight cologne, dinner growing cold upstairs while I lost myself in the zen of mechanical precision. Enter Patricia Williams, the human manifestation of a homeowners association power trip. Patricia relocated to Meadowbrook 4 years ago and immediately crowned herself Empress of Everything. Insurance adjuster who drives a silver Lexus that gets serviced more frequently than most people eat. Acrylic nails that have never touched real labor, platinum hair that defies physics, and a grin that could freeze antifreeze. She'd been HOA president for 4 years straight, unchallenged because nobody else volunteered for neighborhood dictator duties. Her expertise was militarizing documentation. Recycling bins positioned 15 minutes past collection time. Garden bed borders measuring 3 1/4 inches instead of regulation 3 inches. House numbers using fonts that weren't Meadowbrook certified. The woman once violated me for hedges that supposedly exceeded the 30-inch maximum. Appeared with an actual measuring tape. Simply maintaining community excellence, she'd announced with that plastic smile. 3 weeks before the basement incident, she'd marched over while I was sanding table legs. The screech of my belt sander apparently violated her refined sensibilities. Excuse me, but there's a noise ordinance. No power tools after 7 p.m. I wiped my hands on a shop towel, remained diplomatic. Actually, city code allows hobby work until 10 p.m. Happy to show you the ordinance. Her smile turned sub-zero. Well, we'll investigate that. This kind of workshop activity impacts property values. The way she said workshop activity, like I was manufacturing explosives instead of restoring American heritage. The day everything detonated started with Patricia's quarterly garden party spectacular. Sunday afternoon, her backyard filled with neighborhood wives sipping champagne and pretending to care about each other's kitchen renovations. I could hear the artificial chatter through my basement windows. Then her voice sliced through the noise like nails on chalkboard. Oh, that's my new Brunswick pool table. Just purchased it from an antique dealer in Denver. $38,000, but completely worth it. They're delivering it Thursday. My chisel clattered to the concrete floor. She was displaying photos on her tablet. Pictures of a table identical to mine, basking in their impressed gasps like she'd personally invented billiards. That evening, needing wood glue, I fired up my truck and backed out carefully. The diesel's rumble echoed off the houses like mechanical thunder, deep and powerful and absolutely beautiful. When I returned 2 hours later, Patricia stood in her driveway like a monument to suburban fury, arms folded, face crimson, glaring at my basement windows with the intensity of a predator stalking prey. I waved politely. She didn't acknowledge, just kept drilling holes through my foundation with those laser eyes. That night, I'm convinced she spent hours online constructing her fantasy brick by digital brick, persuading herself that somehow I'd stolen her imaginary acquisition. By dawn, she'd evolved from irritating neighbor into something far more dangerous. A Karen with a mission. When 3 patrol cars roared into my driveway with full circus lighting blazing, I knew my peaceful Sunday evening was officially destroyed. 6 officers emerged like they were responding to an armed drug raid, which according to Patricia's Oscar-worthy 911 performance, they were. Officer Chen, a 15-year veteran with understanding eyes and the calm demeanor of someone who'd witnessed every variety of neighborhood insanity, approached with his hand resting casually on his equipment. His partner, a younger officer named Thompson, who looked like he deadlifted police cruisers for recreation, flanked him with notepad ready. "Evening, sir. We received a complaint about illegal gambling at this residence." The complete absurdity hit me like a sledgehammer to the skull. "Illegal gambling, officer? This is my pool table in my basement in my house. That's like saying I'm running a casino with my kitchen table." Patricia materialized beside the officers like a suburban ghost, still gripping her phone with bloodless knuckles. "That's him. That's the gambling operator. I just bought that exact Brunswick yesterday for $38,000. I took a deep breath, tasting the lingering sawdust from my perfectly legal hobby and trying not to laugh at the cosmic prank my life had become. Stay calm, I reminded myself. My grandfather always said, "Documentation defeats desperation every time." "Officers, I can prove ownership immediately." I pulled out my tablet, scrolling to the photo library I'd obsessively curated. "This table has been mine for 14 months. I restored every component from scratch." Chen studied the progression photos with genuine appreciation. Water damage to structural frame to finished masterpiece. His eyebrows rose as he swiped through images of me installing the slate bed, staining wood rails, stretching the felt. "That's impressive craftsmanship," he murmured, zooming in on a shot of the pocket assembly. "You do this professionally?" "Family tradition." My grandfather would have disowned me if I'd done amateur work. Meanwhile, Patricia was experiencing what appeared to be a complete mental collapse. "He's fabricating everything. Look at these." She thrust printed photos at the officers, obviously downloaded from some dealer website 10 minutes before calling 911. "I transferred the money yesterday. They were shipping it this week." Thompson examined her evidence with the enthusiasm of someone reviewing insurance forms. Generic dealer stock photos, no serial numbers, no actual contracts, just glossy images that could have been any Brunswick table manufactured between 1952 and yesterday. "Ma'am, do you have purchase documentation? Bill of sale? Wire transfer confirmations? Dealer contact information?" Patricia's face turned the approximate shade of a stop sign. It's all being finalized. The dealer said documentation takes time for antique tables." While she improvised her story, I was excavating through my basement workbench like a furniture archaeologist. 4-ring binder organized chronologically containing the complete history of my wooden baby. "Here's my insurance policy," I said, handing Chen the sacred grail of personal property ownership. 14 months old, my name, this address, matching serial number. His flashlight beam danced across the official company document, everything aligned perfectly. Numbers, dates, signatures, photographs. Insurance documentation, too. I flipped to the next plastic sleeve. State Farm required progress photos for agreed value coverage. Thompson was taking notes, occasionally glancing at Patricia's increasingly creative explanations. The woman was unraveling faster than a cheap sweater, and I was starting to feel almost sympathetic. Almost. "Officers, he obviously forged everything. He's probably running some elaborate insurance fraud scheme." That accusation was my signal to deploy the ultimate weapon. From the very back of my binder, I extracted a piece of white notebook paper, edges yellowed from handling and age, written in the shaky handwriting of an 87-year-old retiree. 1952 Brunswick Gold Crown. Condition as described. Significant water damage. $2,800 cash. Buyer accepts all risks. Below that, a signature that belonged in a history book. Harold Morrison estate auction, followed by a phone number and date from 14 months ago. Chen examined the handwritten bill of sale like he'd uncovered archaeological treasure. "This is the original purchase document?" Harold was liquidating his basement game room. Nicest gentleman you'd ever meet. Made me promise to send him photos when I finished. The silence that followed was so absolute I could hear my neighbor's pool filter 2 houses away. Thompson closed his notepad with the finality of a courtroom gavel. "Ma'am, this gentleman has documented chain of ownership spanning over a year. Your evidence appears to be internet printouts." Chen's tone shifted to that special frequency cops reserve for people having public breakdowns. "Ma'am, I need to inform you that filing false police reports is a misdemeanor in this jurisdiction. I've seen people receive actual jail time for knowingly providing false information to law enforcement." The color drained from Patricia's face like someone had opened a drain. There must be some horrible misunderstanding. The stress of antique shopping. You know how complicated these transactions can be. But her eyes told a different narrative. As the officers prepared to leave, I caught her watching me through her kitchen window with the cold calculation of a chess grandmaster planning her revenge. This wasn't finished. This was just opening moves. Tuesday morning attacked me with the subtlety of a chainsaw backfiring. I'm stumbling to my mailbox in yesterday's work clothes, coffee cup steaming in the morning chill when I discover the official HOA violation notice tucked inside like a poisonous snake. Notice of covenant violation, unauthorized commercial workshop operation. The citation claimed my basement game room, a perfectly normal recreational space with a single pool table, violated community standards. $250 fine, 72-hour compliance deadline. At the bottom, Patricia's signature flourished like she just signed my execution order. Through my kitchen window, I watched her power walk past my driveway, shooting glances at my basement windows like they were nuclear waste storage. Her morning exercise route had mysteriously expanded to include 23 passes by my house. I counted. Here's what most homeowners don't understand about HOA covenants. They're binding legal contracts, not suggestions written by suburban tyrants having control fantasies. My divorce attorney taught me that everything has documentation, and documentation doesn't lie. I spent my lunch break at the county courthouse digging through public records like a furniture detective. What I uncovered was better than discovering a winning scratcher in my toolbox. My house, purchased in 2019, 2 years before Meadowbrook enacted their recreational space restrictions in 2021. Any installations completed before rule changes are automatically protected by law from retroactive enforcement. Patricia could complain until her vocal cords ruptured, but she had zero legal standing. I drafted a response that would have made my grandfather proud, attached copies of my purchase documentation, and hand-delivered it to the HOA management office. The secretary's eyes widened as she read my rebuttal, probably calculating how much trouble her board member had just created. "Oh my," she whispered like she was witnessing a traffic accident in slow motion. "Mrs. Williams isn't going to appreciate this development." She had that correct. By Thursday, my mailbox had become Patricia's personal violation distribution center. 4 more citations materialized like evil magic. Alleged wood dust on my driveway. I pressure wash weekly with the dedication of a monk. Excessive workshop odors from my basement. Apparently, the honest smell of wood stain and craftsmanship offended her delicate suburban sensibilities, and noise violations during perfectly legal hours. The woman was carpet bombing me with paperwork, hoping something would stick long enough to cause damage. That's when I made the smartest purchase of this entire conflict. I went full surveillance on my own property, 6 high-definition security cameras strategically positioned, all recording to cloud storage with infrared that could spot a spider crawling on my mailbox. The footage revealed Patricia's new obsession, property line reconnaissance. Every morning, she'd patrol our shared fence with her tablet, taking photographs, measuring distances with a telescoping measuring stick that probably cost more than my monthly utilities. The woman had transformed neighbor monitoring into a competitive sport. Friday evening brought the nuclear option, an emergency board meeting to address my ongoing violations. The notice appeared in my mailbox at 5 p.m. for an 8 p.m. meeting, barely legal notification designed to prevent anyone from mounting a defense. I showed up at the community center expecting a kangaroo court and found something worse. 4 middle-aged women sitting around a conference table like they were planning a charity auction. Patricia, her nervous deputy Susan, who apologized for existing too loudly. Margaret, whose primary qualification appeared to be agreeing enthusiastically with everything Patricia proposed. And Janet, the treasurer, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else on earth. "Where are the other board members?" I asked, claiming a chair across from this improvised tribunal. Patricia's smile could have preserved food for months. "This is entirely adequate for tonight's business. We're implementing an immediate prohibition on all workshop activities, effective immediately. Past violations carry a $750 fine." I pulled out my tablet and opened the HOA bylaws I'd memorized that afternoon. Knowledge is power, but applied knowledge is a strategic nuclear weapon. Interesting theory, but Section 3.2 requires 10 days advance notice for voting matters. I scrolled through the document like I was reading a menu. And Section 3.6 mandates a quorum of 6 board members for official votes. I looked around the pathetically sparse room. I count 4 people, which gives this meeting all the legal authority of a book club. Susan's face turned the color of overcooked lobster. "Well, this is just preliminary discussion." And Section 1.8 states that invalid meetings create personal liability for individual board members. I'd done my research. Thanks to 4 hours of legal investigation and a pot of very strong coffee, Patricia's composure shattered like tempered glass. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Coming into our neighborhood with your people and your activities." The poison in her voice could have stripped furniture. But my grandfather taught me something valuable about dealing with bullies. Stay calm. Stick to facts. Let unstable people destroy themselves with their own behavior. I think I'm a homeowner who reads contracts before signing them, I replied. Revolutionary concept, I know. That's when neighbor Michael appeared in my driveway later, apologetic and slightly embarrassed. Most of us think she's completely unhinged, he confided. Want to grab coffee tomorrow? I think it's time we organized. Saturday morning brought an unexpected doorbell concert at 7:30 a.m. Janet Rodriguez from City Code Enforcement stood on my porch, clipboard in hand, and the battle-worn expression of someone who'd spent too many years mediating neighbor conflicts. Sorry to disturb you this early, Mr. Santos. Anonymous complaint about unlicensed commercial woodworking. Mind if I take a look? I led her into my basement where the morning light illuminated my weekend sanctuary. The aroma of wood polish and clean varnish hung in the air like expensive cologne, and every tool had its designated place on pegboard walls that would make a German engineer weep with envy. Janet's tension evaporated the moment she stepped inside. Dear God, this is cleaner than the shop where I get my cabinets made. She ran her finger along my workbench, coming up spotless. What do you do for work? Family woodworking business. This is pure hobby, evenings only, no customers. She nodded, scribbling notes while admiring my tool organization setup. Anonymous complainant claimed you were running an illegal business. I see zero evidence of commercial activity, customer projects, or cash transactions. You're completely legitimate. As Janet climbed back into her city vehicle, she paused with one foot on the running board. Off the record, I've been to this neighborhood 6 times this month. Same voice every time, different complaints. Lady needs a hobby that doesn't involve my department. Patricia's next masterstroke arrived via certified mail, a formal complaint to my homeowner's insurance company. She'd contacted Allstate directly, claiming my basement activities created an unacceptable fire hazard threatening neighboring properties. The letter demanded immediate inspection or policy cancellation. When my insurance agent, Maria, showed up Wednesday afternoon, I braced for bureaucratic nightmare. Instead, I found a kindred spirit who spent the first 15 minutes admiring my tool organization like it was a museum exhibit. Someone's definitely trying to mess with you, she said, signing her inspection report with enthusiasm. Your safety setup exceeds commercial standards. Half these neighborhood basements are disasters waiting to happen with their space heaters and extension cord jungle gyms. Maria's company responded by sending Patricia a cease and desist letter that basically translated to, "Stop filing false insurance claims or we'll prosecute you for fraud, Karen." But our neighborhood dictator had discovered the nuclear weapon of modern warfare, social media. The Meadowbrook Community Watch Facebook group materialized overnight like a digital plague. Patricia's opening post featured photos of my truck and basement windows, accompanied by text that would make a racist whistle manufacturer proud. Just concerned about maintaining our wonderful community standards, she wrote with enough artificial sweetness to cause diabetes. Some recent activities might be more appropriate in commercial zones, don't you think? Michael showed me the screenshots over coffee, his face redder than a fire truck. 31 people joined in the first 2 hours. It's like watching a dumpster fire, but you can't stop staring. The comment section became a digital coliseum. Several neighbors jumped to my defense, sharing their own Patricia horror stories. Others lurked silently, probably calculating the social cost of opposing the HOA's reigning empress. Patricia's digital empire imploded when she started deleting disagreeable comments. Nothing ignites suburban rage quite like obvious censorship, and soon the group fractured into warring factions, debating everything from free speech to property values. Monday morning brought escalation to my actual property, scattered across my driveway like metallic confetti. 36 construction screws strategically positioned to puncture unsuspecting tires. My security cameras captured the 3 a.m. Perpetrator, a figure in a dark sweatshirt moving with the nervous energy of someone committing their first felony. The footage was grainy, but that distinctive quick-step march looked familiar. Patricia walked like she was perpetually late for a confrontation. Officer Thompson treated my police report with appropriate seriousness, especially when I explained the escalating harassment timeline. Classic intimidation pattern, he observed, photographing the evidence. Document everything. These cases build for months, then explode into arrests very suddenly. While obsessively reviewing camera footage, I spotted something that made my coffee go cold. Patricia's morning routine now included detailed surveillance missions, walking our property line with her tablet, measuring distances, photographing angles. This wasn't random harassment. She was conducting military-grade reconnaissance for some larger campaign. Thursday's mail delivered the nuclear option. An anonymous letter on generic printer paper. Your kind doesn't belong here. Leave voluntarily or face escalating consequences. No signature, no return address, but the paper stock matched Patricia's HOA notices perfectly. My divorce lawyer had taught me enough about document analysis to recognize identical watermarks and printer characteristics. Detective Rodriguez, assigned to my growing case file, examined the letter with professional interest. Anonymous threatening correspondence qualifies for hate crime prosecution under both state and federal statutes, she explained. We're building a substantial criminal case against your neighbor. That evening, Michael's coffee shop coalition expanded to 7 households, each armed with their own Patricia documentation. Sarah, the paralegal, had been fined for unauthorized flowerbed modifications. Carlos, the electrician, got cited for parking his work van in his own driveway without permits. Time for coordinated resistance, Michael declared, stirring sugar with revolutionary enthusiasm. Individual complaints get ignored. Group action gets results. As we shared war stories and legal strategies, I realized Patricia had accidentally created her own worst nightmare, a unified neighborhood opposition with legitimate grievances and professional expertise. The hunter had become the hunted. Friday afternoon found me in the county courthouse basement, a fluorescent-lit purgatory that smelled like stale coffee and bureaucratic despair. The records clerk, a woman who'd apparently been filing documents since the Reagan administration, directed me to Research Room C with the enthusiasm of someone pointing toward a morgue. HOA financial records are in the corporate filings, she wheezed, sliding a dusty box across the counter. Good luck making sense of that chaos. 4 hours later, surrounded by paper stacks that looked like a hurricane had hit a law firm, I discovered why Patricia guarded these documents like state secrets. Meadowbrook's HOA financial statements read like a masterclass in creative theft. $18,000 paid to PWB Property Services for undefined consulting services. $9,200 to Patricia's Premier Gardens for landscaping that had never appeared. $14,500 to Williams & Associates for legal services that coincidentally began exactly when Patricia's custody battle started. The beautiful part, all 3 companies shared the same business address. 1456 Oak Street, Patricia's house. A quick dive into the state business registry confirmed what my gut already knew. PWB Property Services, sole proprietor, Patricia Williams, established 8 months after her divorce filing. Patricia's Premier Gardens, officially dissolved last year after completing 0 actual projects. Williams & Associates, her ex-husband's law firm, which explained her sudden need for untraceable income. Our elected HOA president had been systematically looting the neighborhood fund like a suburban Al Capone, funneling approximately $89,000 into her personal legal defense fund over 30 months. But the discovery that made my hands shake wasn't the theft itself. It was the hunting pattern hidden beneath. Cross-referencing complaint dates with recent real estate sales, I uncovered Patricia's true business model. She'd systematically target homeowners with escalating harassment until they sold below market value, then use her real estate license to facilitate quick sales to investor contacts. Double commission plus kickbacks from grateful buyers picking up distressed properties. 4 families had fled Meadowbrook in the past 18 months after surviving Patricia's special attention. The Johnsons sold $35,000 under appraisal after months of citations about their teenage son's skateboard ramp creating excessive noise. Then Nguyen surrendered and moved after weekly violations for culturally inappropriate cooking aromas that allegedly violated community standards. My case fit her playbook perfectly. Single homeowner, no family support network, prime property worth $425,000. Perfect target for forced sale manipulation. The nuclear revelation was buried in a stack of foreclosure notices. When I found it, I actually laughed out loud in that tomb-quiet research room. Patricia's own house was in default. $28,000 in unpaid HOA dues to her own association. Back taxes, attorney fees, credit card debt, the works. Her foreclosure hearing was scheduled for exactly 5 weeks from today. The irony was so perfect, it belonged in a sitcom. Our HOA president, the woman who terrorized neighbors over minor rule violations, hadn't paid her own dues in over 15 months. Everything clicked into focus like adjusting binoculars. The escalating desperation, the increasingly unhinged harassment, the willingness to file false police reports. Patricia wasn't just a power-hungry Karen. She was a cornered animal facing financial obliteration, and I represented her last chance at a major commission before the bank seized everything. The pool table incident had given her the perfect excuse to accelerate her timeline. I photocopied everything, my hands trembling slightly as the machine hummed through page after page of evidence. $23 for the privilege of documenting my neighbor's criminal enterprise. The best money I'd ever spent. Walking back to my truck in the courthouse parking lot, I called Michael with news that would reshape our entire strategy. You sitting down? Because what I just found changes everything. The war was about to shift from survival to offense, and Patricia had no idea the trap was closing around her. Saturday morning transformed Michael's garage into mission control for Operation Takedown Karen. The air smelled like coffee, wood glue, and the sweet scent of impending justice. As our motley crew of suburban rebels gathered around a folding table that had seen better decades, Michael had assembled what I could only describe as the Avengers of neighborhood warfare. Linda Chen, a forensic accountant who could spot embezzlement like a bloodhound tracking bacon. David Martinez, a semi-retired corporate lawyer whose idea of fun was destroying people in depositions. Karen Rodriguez, a high school principal with organizational skills that would make the Pentagon jealous. And Roberto Valdez, a contractor who knew every building code loophole in the Tri-County area. Holy shit on a shingle, Linda muttered, spreading Patricia's financial records across the table like a CSI investigator examining murder evidence. This woman's embezzlement technique has all the subtlety of a sledgehammer through a window. David pushed his reading glasses up his nose, scanning documents with the predatory focus of a shark smelling blood. $89,000 in fraudulent transactions. Paper trail cleaner than my grandmother's kitchen. Documented harassment pattern. Prosecutors salivate over cases this easy. Karen was already creating her signature color-coded timeline on poster board, mapping harassment campaigns against real estate sales with the precision of someone who'd spent 25 years making teenagers understand calculus. Look at this beautiful pattern. Target vulnerable families, escalate violations for months, then mysteriously produce investor buyers when they break. Roberto leaned back in his folding chair, letting out a whistle that could summon dogs from 4 blocks away. And she's using HOA money to pay divorce lawyers. That's not criminal genius. That's criminal stupid. Our battle plan emerged over 3 hours of increasingly caffeinated strategy sessions. Operation Documentation. Fortress. Roberto volunteered to turn our neighborhood into Fort Knox with security cameras, motion sensors, night vision, cloud backup. If this woman so much as glances sideways at your property line, we'll have it documented in courtroom quality 8K. Karen launched into full principal mode, creating standardized incident report forms with the thoroughness of someone designing a final exam. Dates, times, witnesses, photographs, police report numbers. We're building a case file so airtight it could survive a nuclear blast. Linda was practically rubbing her hands together with forensic accounting glee. I'm calling colleagues who owe me favors. We'll produce an independent audit that meets federal court standards. Operation Legal Annihilation. David explained HOA corporate governance like he was describing his favorite hobby, which it apparently was. Board members have fiduciary duties under state law. Every fraudulent transaction creates personal liability. She's not just stealing, she's destroying her own legal protection. The annual board elections were perfectly timed for maximum damage. Michael, Linda, and David would run for the 3 open positions, flipping control from Patricia's rubber stamp committee to our Justice Coalition. Criminal complaint gets filed Wednesday, David continued, organizing police reports with the satisfaction of someone solving a crossword puzzle. Embezzlement, harassment, false police reports. She's looking at a felony buffet. Operation Public Humiliation. Karen's teaching background made her our propaganda minister. Door-to-door information campaign. Professional flyers explaining the theft. Coordinated social media exposure. We make Patricia's crimes everybody's dinner table conversation. The financial impact was neighborhood destroying. $89,000 stolen from 45 households meant every family had been systematically overcharged nearly $2,000. When soccer moms discover their HOA president has been picking their pockets, suburban revolutions happen fast. Roberto suggested the media angle that would make this story journalist catnip. HOA president steals money while racially harassing neighbors. Channel 5 would interrupt regular programming for this goldmine. Our psychological warfare strategy was elegantly simple. Let Patricia think she was winning while we constructed a legal cage around her. I'd maintain normal routines, appear oblivious to her schemes, and allow her desperation to generate more prosecutable evidence. Classic rope-a-dope, David explained with the satisfaction of someone who'd spent decades destroying opponents in courtrooms. Let her exhaust herself, throwing wild punches while we document every missed swing. The timeline convergence was poetry. Patricia's foreclosure hearing in 4 weeks, audit results in 3 weeks, board elections in 5 weeks, multiple disasters arriving simultaneously like a perfectly choreographed demolition. Linda had already contacted Channel 5's investigative bulldog, Maria Santos, a reporter who'd built her Emmy collection exposing suburban corruption. HOA fraud stories generate massive ratings. She's practically drooling to cover this train wreck. David discovered the final nail for Patricia's professional coffin. Her real estate license renewal in 7 weeks required criminal background disclosure. Fraud convictions meant automatic permanent revocation. Complete career obliteration, he said, with the warm satisfaction of someone describing a perfect sunset. Financial ruin plus professional destruction equals total annihilation. As our suburban war council dispersed, Michael grabbed my shoulder with genuine respect. 3 months ago, you were the quiet woodworker who minded his own business. Now you're commanding a neighborhood revolution. I surveyed our evidence walls, battle plans, and coalition schedules. The transformation from isolated target to resistance leader felt surreal, like discovering you could fly. Sometimes bullies pick the wrong victim, I replied. Patricia's about to learn that lesson the hard way. The trap was baited, loaded, and perfectly positioned. Now we just waited for our cornered predator to trigger her own destruction. Monday morning brought the sweet sound of panic in the form of Patricia's voice echoing across the neighborhood like a smoke alarm having a nervous breakdown. She was pacing her driveway at 7:15 a.m., phone pressed to her ear, gesticulating wildly at anyone unfortunate enough to make eye contact. I need an emergency board meeting tonight. Something's happening and I need legal protection. Through my kitchen window, I watched her attempt to rally her rapidly shrinking support base. Susan shuffled over reluctantly, looking like she'd rather be getting dental surgery. Margaret followed a few minutes later, but even from a distance, I could see the doubt creeping into their body language. The emergency assessment notice appeared in every mailbox by noon. $650 per household for immediate legal defense against outside agitators attempting to destabilize community governance. The letter claimed I was threatening to sue the entire HOA and demanded immediate payment to hire attorneys. What Patricia didn't know was that Michael attended her pathetic 4-person meeting hidden in the community center parking lot with a digital recorder that picked up every desperate word. They're investigating our finances, Patricia's voice crackled through the speaker when Michael played it back later. I don't know how much they know, but we need to control the narrative before this gets out of hand. Susan's nervous response was barely audible. Patricia, maybe we should just... No, I've worked too hard building this community to let them destroy everything. If I have to leave town, fine, but I'm not going down alone. The audio quality was courtroom ready, and David's predatory grin when he heard it could have powered the neighborhood streetlights. Wednesday night brought Patricia's first act of genuine desperation, vandalism with a side of stupidity. My security cameras caught her sneaking around my property at 3:12 a.m., dressed like a suburban ninja in black leggings and a dark hoodie that fooled absolutely no one. She'd brought a toolkit of petty revenge, tire-slashing knife, spray paint, and what appeared to be small containers of wood stain staged behind my basement windows. The plan was obviously to create evidence of environmental violations, but Patricia had never been accused of criminal genius. The beautiful part, she spent 20 minutes positioning fake evidence while standing directly under my motion-activated floodlight, providing crystal-clear footage of her face, her Lexus's license plate, and her pathetic attempt at frame-up artistry. Thursday morning's code enforcement visit was her most spectacular failure yet. The inspector found the planted stain containers immediately. They still had Home Depot price stickers attached. When he pointed out that wood stain containers don't create environmental violations anyway, Patricia's story collapsed faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. Ma'am, filing false environmental reports is a federal offense, the inspector explained with barely concealed irritation. I'm documenting this incident and forwarding it to our fraud investigation unit. Patricia's social media meltdown began that afternoon and continued through the weekend like a digital dumpster fire that nobody could look away from. The Meadowbrook Community Watch Facebook group became her personal therapy session, complete with increasingly unhinged rants about outside agitators and property value destruction. Her 3 a.m. post on Friday was a masterpiece of self-incrimination. Some people don't understand that communities have standards. When certain elements move in and start changing the character of established neighborhoods, decent people have to take action to protect their investments. Screenshot saved. Forwarded to our legal team. Saturday brought the bribery attempt that sealed her fate. Roberto was installing camera equipment at Karen's house when Patricia approached with the subtlety of a used car salesman at month end. I know Diego is paying you people to lie about me, she said, pulling out an envelope thick enough to choke a horse. $2,500 cash if you forget about those security cameras and stop helping with this harassment campaign. Roberto, bless his contractor's soul, kept installing cameras while recording the entire conversation on his phone. Ma'am, I'm just helping neighbors protect their property. Maybe you should talk to a lawyer. I don't need lawyers. I need this neighborhood back under control. Her voice pitched higher than a smoke detector. That man has turned everyone against me with his lies and manipulation. The desperation was so thick you could spread it on toast. Patricia was unraveling in real time, and every frantic move was creating more evidence for our growing prosecution file. Sunday evening brought the nuclear option, another false police report claiming I'd threatened her with a power tool during a driveway confrontation that never happened. The responding officers found me in my basement, covered in sawdust, working on a neighbor's bookshelf with 4 witnesses present. Officer Thompson's patience had officially evaporated. Ma'am, this is your 5th false report in 3 weeks. You're looking at charges. The preliminary audit results arrived Monday via Linda's encrypted email, and the numbers were even worse than our original estimates. Patricia hadn't just stolen $89,000, she'd been systematically overcharging every household for phantom services while pocketing the excess. Total theft, approximately $127,000 over 36 months. Our neighborhood dictator wasn't just broke and desperate. She was a career criminal who'd finally run out of victims and time. The endgame was accelerating beyond our wildest projections, and Patricia was doing all the work for us. Tuesday night's break-in was the kind of criminal masterpiece that would make the Keystone Cops proud. At 2:47 a.m., while normal people were dreaming about vacation destinations and winning lottery numbers, Patricia was living her best burglar life at the HOA management office. The security footage looked like a rejected scene from a heist movie written by someone who'd never actually committed a crime. There was our suburban Napoleon using a stolen master key with all the stealth of an elephant in tap shoes, frantically feeding documents into an industrial shredder like she was making the world's most expensive confetti. The silent alarm triggered faster than Patricia's common sense had abandoned her, and Officer Chen arrived to find her elbow deep in evidence destruction, surrounded by paper snow that used to be financial records. "Ma'am, step away from the computer and put your hands where I can see them," Chen commanded, probably wondering how his Tuesday night shift had turned into amateur hour at the crime academy. Patricia's response was pure daytime television gold. "You don't understand. They're destroying everything I've built. This community was perfect before they came." The smell of overheated electronics and desperate sweat filled the office as she was cuffed and read her rights. Watching the footage later, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Until I remembered the fake police reports and tire-slashing incidents. Bail was set at $35,000, which for Patricia might as well have been $35 million, considering her financial situation resembled the Titanic after meeting the iceberg. She spent 4 days in county lockup, probably the first time in her adult life she'd been somewhere without a manager to complain to. While our fallen dictator was enjoying government hospitality, Susan made the decision that would seal Patricia's fate forever. She visited the jail with a digital recorder hidden in her purse, and what she captured was prosecutorial poetry. "I need your help, Susan." Patricia's voice cracked through the phone speaker when Susan played the recording for our coalition. The desperation was so thick you could taste it. "There's money in my basement behind the water heater, cash. We can both disappear before this gets worse." Susan's nervous response barely registered. "Patricia, I can't." $65,000. "Help me and we start over somewhere. They don't know us." David whistled low when he heard the recording. Admissions of theft, conspiracy, flight risk, obstruction of justice. This woman just confessed to everything while sitting in jail. It's like she's trying to set records for criminal stupidity. Thursday evening's emergency neighborhood meeting packed the community center beyond capacity. The air crackled with righteous fury and the distinctive aroma of community center coffee that could strip paint. 48 households showed up, and the collective anger could have powered Las Vegas for a week. Michael presented Linda's final audit results with the satisfaction of someone revealing a royal flush. The numbers were staggering. Patricia hadn't just stolen $89,000. She'd operated a criminal enterprise that included phantom vendor payments, inflated service contracts, and kickback schemes totaling $127,000 over 3 years. "Every single family in this room has been systematically robbed," Michael announced to gasps and creative profanity that would make sailors blush. Average theft per household? $2,650. The vote of no confidence was unanimous except for Margaret, who abstained while looking like she wanted to tunnel through the floor and emerge somewhere in Canada. 38 households demanded Patricia's immediate removal, criminal prosecution, and full restitution with interest. Friday morning brought the media circus Patricia had always craved, just not in the starring role she'd imagined. Channel 5's news van arrived at dawn, followed by crews from competing stations who'd caught wind of the suburban scandal goldmine. Investigative reporter Maria Santos interviewed neighbors with the enthusiasm of someone who'd stumbled onto Emmy material. The evening news led with HOA president arrested in massive embezzlement scheme, complete with Patricia's mugshot and security footage of her document-shredding performance art. My interview required every ounce of diplomatic training my divorce had provided. "This isn't about revenge or getting even," I told the camera, choosing words carefully. "It's about holding people accountable when they abuse positions of trust." The story exploded across social media faster than gossip at a high school reunion. Such HOA Karen trending nationally within hours, with thousands sharing their own nightmare stories and celebrating our neighborhood's David versus Goliath victory. Patricia's real estate career disintegrated in spectacular fashion. Her brokerage suspended her license immediately. Past clients began filing complaints about suspicious transactions, and her professional reputation became more toxic than nuclear waste. The foreclosure auction proceeded without drama. Patricia's house sold for $315,000, $85,000 below market value because criminal investigations and news vans tend to discourage bidders. Saturday's 4 a.m. Facebook confession video was her final act of self-destruction. Sobbing into her phone camera, mascara running like abstract art, she blamed everyone except herself for the consequences of her criminal choices. "I was just trying to protect our community," she wailed to the internet. "Sometimes good people have to make hard decisions." The comment section became a digital firing squad where neighbors shared years of accumulated grievances. The video disappeared within hours, but screenshots are forever. Our suburban tyrant's reign of terror was officially over. The sentencing hearing on a crisp Thursday morning felt like the season finale of the world's most satisfying reality show. The courthouse parking lot resembled a neighborhood reunion, with 45-plus residents carpooling like we were heading to the world's most important sporting event. Judge Patricia Hernandez's courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Every pew filled with faces I'd come to know as allies over the past 4 months. The smell of nervous energy and courthouse coffee mixed with the collective anticipation of people who'd waited far too long for justice. Patricia sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit that clashed spectacularly with her fake platinum highlights, looking like a deflated balloon animal beside her overworked public defender. The woman who'd once terrorized our neighborhood with clipboard authority now resembled a suburban scarecrow that had lost a fight with a tornado. Channel 5's cameras were positioned for maximum drama, and Maria Santos had scored front-row seats for what she'd already called the most satisfying HOA story of the decade. When Judge Hernandez called for victim impact statements, I stood first, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. 4 months ago, I'd been a quiet woodworker who kept to himself. Today, I was speaking for an entire community. "Your Honor, this case started with a woman calling 911 because I was working in my own basement," I began, my voice steadier than I'd expected. But it was never really about a pool table. It was about power, control, and what happens when someone decides they can terrorize their neighbors without consequences. I described the escalating harassment, the fake police reports, the systematic theft that had robbed every family of thousands of dollars. But mostly I talked about fear, the way Patricia had weaponized authority to make people afraid in their own homes. "She didn't just steal our money," I continued, making eye contact with Patricia, who refused to look back. "She stole our peace of mind, our sense of community, our belief that neighbors look out for each other instead of preying on each other." Michael spoke next, his electrician's voice carrying the authority of someone who'd seen human nature at its worst and best. Linda presented the financial evidence with forensic precision. Karen described the educational impact of watching their community stand up to corruption. When it was Patricia's turn, her attorney launched into a performance worthy of community theater. Mental health struggles, divorce trauma, financial pressure, every excuse except personal responsibility for criminal behavior. "My client deeply regrets her actions," the public defender pleaded. "She's willing to make full restitution and undergo counseling." Patricia finally stood to address the court, and what came out was pure, undiluted audacity wrapped in crocodile tears. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she sobbed, dabbing her eyes with tissues that had seen more action than a NASCAR pit crew. "This community meant everything to me. I was just trying to maintain standards, protect property values. Sometimes people don't understand that leadership requires difficult decisions." The courtroom's collective eye roll was practically audible. Even her own attorney looked like he wanted to crawl under the defense table. Judge Hernandez had clearly heard enough for one lifetime. "Ms. Williams, in 32 years on this bench, I've rarely encountered such a systematic abuse of fiduciary responsibility combined with racial harassment and criminal intimidation." She paused, studying Patricia with the expression of someone examining an interesting but repulsive insect specimen. "You held a position of trust and used it to steal from the very people who elected you. You targeted a minority homeowner with false police reports that could have resulted in tragedy. You destroyed evidence, attempted to flee jurisdiction, and even now refuse to accept responsibility for your crimes." The judge's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "This court sentences you to 5 years in state prison, full restitution of $127,000 plus court costs, and 6 years supervised probation following release." The gavel came down like thunder, and the courtroom erupted in applause that Judge Hernandez didn't even try to quiet. 45 households getting justice sounds different than regular applause. It's deeper, more satisfying, like the sound of the universe correcting itself. As Patricia was led away in shackles, she finally looked back at our section of the courtroom. The expression on her face wasn't remorse or apology. It was pure, concentrated hatred for people who dared to hold her accountable. Outside on the courthouse steps, with cameras rolling and neighbors celebrating, a reporter thrust a microphone in my direction. "Mr. Santos, what would you tell other homeowners dealing with HOA abuse?" I thought about everything we'd been through. The fear, the documentation, the coalition building, the months of preparation that led to this moment. Document everything. Build community. Truth wins, I said, feeling the weight of 4 months of struggle and triumph in those 6 words. The quote would go viral within hours, becoming a rallying cry for HOA reform movements nationwide. But standing there in the sunshine, surrounded by neighbors who'd become family through shared struggle, I realized something profound. We hadn't just defeated a bully, we'd discovered what a real community could accomplish when good people decided to fight back together. The American dream wasn't just about individual success. It was about neighbors protecting neighbors, justice serving everyone equally, and ordinary people becoming extraordinary when circumstances demanded it. 8 months after Patricia's sentencing, Meadowbrook Commons had transformed from a suburban police state into something resembling an actual community. The smell of Saturday morning barbecues and the sound of kids playing in yards without fear had replaced the tension that used to hang over our neighborhood like smog. Our new HOA board, Michael as president, Linda as treasurer, David handling legal affairs, implemented radical concepts like transparency and common sense. Monthly financial reports were posted online. Board meetings were actually announced in advance, and violation notices required photographic evidence and reasonable timelines. The community workshop project that Patricia would have cited into oblivion was now flourishing in the former restricted use area behind the clubhouse. Karen coordinated the tool-sharing schedule with the efficiency of someone organizing a military operation, and watching neighbors who'd barely spoken before sharing woodworking tips was better than any therapy. Property values, ironically, had increased 18% since our dictator's removal. Turns out buyers prefer neighborhoods known for community that defeated corruption over HOA president embezzles money while harassing minorities. Who knew? The restitution payments arrived like Christmas morning, spread across 15 months. Every household received their stolen money plus interest, and watching neighbors pay down credit cards and plan actual vacations with recovered funds felt like economic justice in action. Patricia's prison reality was considerably less comfortable than her previous lifestyle. According to Susan, who'd maintained contact through guilt and morbid curiosity, our former neighborhood Napoleon was working in the prison kitchen for 85 cents an hour, while sharing a cell with someone who'd committed actual armed robbery. The documentary film students from State University had turned our story into Pool Table Justice, a Suburban Story, which won the regional film festival and got picked up for national distribution. I donated my appearance fees to establish the Meadowbrook Trades Education Scholarship, funded by Patricia's ongoing restitution payments, which felt like poetic justice with a mechanical twist. 4 teenagers had already received scholarships to attend technical college for woodworking programs. Watching Sofia Rodriguez, Karen's niece, graduate from community college with an associate degree in furniture design was better than any craftsmanship award I'd ever won. My personal life had evolved in directions I'd never expected. Linda and I had been dating slowly and carefully for 6 months, bonding over shared experiences of standing up to bullies and discovering that forensic accountants and woodworkers had more in common than either profession might expect. The Brunswick that started this entire saga was now famous in billiard circles, featured in magazines as the pool table that defeated an HOA Karen. I'd received offers to sell, but some things aren't for sale, especially furniture that accidentally became symbols of standing up to institutional racism and suburban tyranny. Every Sunday, I still played pool with neighbors, but now I brought neighborhood kids who were interested in learning about woodworking, restoration, and the satisfaction of creating things with your own hands. Teaching Roberto Jr. how to sand table legs while his father watched with pride was worth more than any commission Patricia could have stolen. The legal precedent our case established was being cited in HOA fraud prosecutions across 4 states. David had been invited to speak at legal conferences about fiduciary duty violations, and our documentation methods were being taught in community organizing workshops nationwide. State legislature passed the Meadowbrook Act requiring annual financial audits for all HOAs with budgets over $75,000. The bill signing ceremony included photos with the governor, but the real victory was knowing that other neighborhoods wouldn't have to go through what we'd survived. Last month's email from a viewer in Seattle, another veteran being harassed by his HOA president, reminded me that our story had inspired people facing similar battles across the country. I'd started consulting with other communities pro bono, sharing documentation strategies and coalition-building techniques that had worked for us. The neighborhood block parties were now monthly traditions, with everyone contributing dishes and stories and the kind of genuine friendship that Patricia's rule had made impossible. Watching kids from different families playing together while adults shared grilling tips and home repair advice felt like discovering what suburbs were supposed to be. As I write this, I can hear Michael's leaf blower and smell Karen's weekend baking project drifting through my basement windows. The sounds of a healthy community, productive activity, voluntary cooperation, people choosing to help each other instead of tear each other down. Share your HOA nightmare stories in the comments below. Your documentation and persistence might inspire someone else to fight back against their neighborhood tyrant. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories proving that justice still works when ordinary people refuse to accept extraordinary abuse. Next week, Karen tries to steal military veterans' workshop, learns about federal crimes the hard way. From all of us here at HOA Stories, thanks so much for watching today's HOA Karen Meltdown. If you enjoyed seeing neighbors stand their ground and karma catch up, smash that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe so you won't miss the next HOA drama we bring you.